I first saw David Helfgott perform about 10 years ago, and it was an extraordinary experience. He was this man who had all sorts of strange eccentricities of personality, if you like, and a socially very awkward person. But when he sat down at the piano and started to play, he transported the room. I mean, it was a phenomenon to see. And so from the outset, I thought, in this gap, must lie an extraordinary story. And of course, that turned out to be the case. And in a sense, the film is about that gap between the great virtuoso young pianist that he was and the curious, eccentric, lovable and funny man that he is today. And how did the one lead to the other? That was the idea that sort of drove me in the first place. The casting was absolutely crucial to the film. I mean, when you're making a film, there are many little compromises that have to be made along the way, but one of the ones that simply could not be made was in the area of the central cast. Who was going to play this character of David? An extraordinary part, beautifully written script, but seemingly impossible. Well, the solution was actually blindingly simple in the end, because in my view, there really was only one actor who had the peculiar kind of genius that was needed to carry this role through, and that was Geoffrey Rush. I simply didn't see anybody else. I was aware of Geoffrey's work from years ago, many years ago, watching him in the theatre. I'd seen him again quite recently, this is several years ago, and we simply met and we talked about it, and I was convinced that Geoffrey was really the only person who could do this. It led to a number of dilemmas, because the script was not structured in a way that would have allowed for an actor of Geoffrey's age to play the David as it was scripted at that time. So we had to modify the script in order to accommodate Geoffrey's age. And this led to a new casting problem, which was who was going to play the middle David, as it were, the David of the adolescent years, from his early teens through to his 20s at the Royal College. Noah Taylor has a very difficult role to play as well as the adolescent David. He has to take David from those sort of early teenage years through to his early 20s at the Royal College. And it's his character that really sort of charts the onset of David's problems and ultimately the breakdown that he experiences. Very, very difficult part to play. And Noah, I think, was absolutely perfect. I mean, he's a very instinctive performer, and he is always able to surprise you as a director. I mean, he will even the smallest gesture can assume a different sort of meaning with Noah. It's a very difficult thing to communicate, but you sometimes watch what he's doing on the set and it seems very small and very slight, and then of course you see it on the screen and you read every nuance of it. The title of the film was always a challenge, because for years it was called, well, I wrote a draft called Flight of the Bumblebee, and but that sounded like a children's film or an animation, so we abandoned that, and then it was simply Helfgott for years, which of course means with the help of God and has its own powerful sort of resonance, but it's a difficult title to use over the phone with people. You know, the spelling is difficult and so on. So we experimented with this title, Shine, and it actually came out of, I'd mentioned to Jan Sardi about this particular song by Pink Floyd called Shine On You Crazy Diamond, and at one stage we were thinking of maybe using some of this music in the film. It was relevant to the era in which David was going through the psychiatric institutions and so on. And so Jan actually experimented by just putting the word on the front of the script and sending it to me and saying, don't think about anything, just open the envelope and look at it and see whether it says anything to you. shine. Well, it didn't seem right. You know, I couldn't feel it, and it always felt like a sort of temporary thing. But curiously, it's now acquired a tremendous sort of power, and it encapsulates the feeling of light at the end of the tunnel, if you like. And there are one or two moments in the film where, particularly when you see the scrapbook burning in the fire, for example, and you see the headline, "David Shines," and suddenly it seems to mean, you know, something very powerful and very strong. And I like it, but it took a while for me to get used to the idea